In October of 2015, our town faced historic flooding that changed the landscape of Lexington forever. Roads washed away, homes flooded, and places we'd always known were suddenly unrecognizable. But in the midst of destruction, our community came together, and since then, we've worked tirelessly to rebuild. This is the story of how Lexington endured the 1,000-year flood and how we came back stronger than ever.
I was pulling in the upper parking lot at around 5 o'clock in the morning. My alarm company had told me that our doors were being tested or somebody was breaking into them, when in actuality it was the water was actually pushing up against the doors and actually coming through the doors, and the parking lot was impassable. The upper lot was accessible, but only for the first few feet, and everything else was underwater.
I received a call around 4-ish, 4:30, and all he said was, and I could quote, "The old mill dam has broke, come in now," and he hung up the phone. And I literally had to call him back because I didn't believe him. And he said, "Come in now." And driving up here, it was constantly raining. I did not, for some reason, I did not believe him. I thought it was like a breach of the gate or something like that, but when I saw that water pouring out the old mill, I was just in awe.
Things began on October 1st of 2015, where we were anticipating and receiving significant rainfall as a result of Hurricane Joaquin, which had come inland in the Charleston area, I believe. But we left for the weekend thinking, okay, we've got our things together. I got my first call on Sunday morning around 5 a.m. notifying me that the Old Mill Pond Dam had collapsed overnight and releasing all the pond water and flooding downstream.
I'll never forget it because while I'm watching the dam give away, the first phone call I got that morning from media was from CNN in Atlanta. And they're like, "Hey, just checking in to see what's going on in Lexington."
I remember Lieutenant Snellgrove going into a area where a car was just sitting there. And we had to make sure no one was in that car. And he actually waited all the way out there. For some reason, I think he had on some wade boots or whatever, wading boots, and he actually walked out there and searched the car.
One officer went into a homeowner's home that had no idea that the river was rising behind her home. She was asleep in her bed, an elderly woman. He picked her up and carried her waist deep in water out to his patrol car, put her in his patrol car, shut the door, turned around, and her home fell into the creek. It fell off the foundation. She could have very well been killed in that home that night, but she wasn't because of his actions.
Well, the damage was widespread, not only in Lexington, but also throughout the Midlands. Numerous earthen dams collapsed due to just the 20 inches. We ended up receiving 20 inches of rainfall in that watershed area. We estimate that it was somewhere in the neighborhood of a 1,000-year rain event, causing significant flooding. And it ended up taking out 3 major dams right here in the town of Lexington. The dams actually collapsed in what would be perceived as reverse order. There was not a upstream to downstream collapse. It was reversed, and which actually turned out to reduce the amount of damage that ultimately ended up happening, because we didn't have a catastrophic one dam after the next. Each downstream dam had already collapsed by the time the one upstream then collapsed.
The flood impacted both the Old Mill Brew Pub and the entire Old Mill family from just torrential water damage. We were able to get through it, but not without some help from others. And fortunately, we were slightly above grade where everybody else below us suffered much more significant damage.
We had such an outpouring from our community and our local restaurants with food. It was a lot of thank yous. Anytime there's a critical event that happens here or even, elsewhere, our community always comes out to tell us how much we're appreciated.
We had the opportunity to raise some money for our staff by putting on a chicken bog and beer party out on our deck, because that's the only place we could do it at the time. And so our suppliers, both food and beverage, were able to assist us by gifting us the food and beer for the event, and made chicken bog, huge amount of chicken bog. We were charging $5 a bowl and $5 a beer, and all the money would go straight to our staff. Again, we had no means to advertise it publicly. We just did it social media, and word traveled that we were putting it on, and people lined up around the parking lot, walking over all the trees and debris and branches. It was a very emotional moment for my wife and I.
So one of the things that having a flood event will do is it'll allow you to pause and assess your situation and see what kind of condition things are in. The Gibson Pond Park had opened in 2007, I believe. The dam itself had actually been the old roadbed for Gibson Road. It was important to us to consider how would we still maintain pedestrian traffic across the waterway, or a body of water that was safe, for all to enjoy, and that would withstand big floods of the future. That's how we ended up with the structural steel pedestrian walkway. That was sort of a compromise between lookouts, sidewalks that went down to the spillway, those types of things, was to replace it with this structural steel pedestrian bridge, as well as the two fishing piers. Those were added as well, and are incorporated into the design, so that it's not actually like extra. It's just simply on top of what are the wing walls for where the spillway is contained. Simultaneous to the Gibson Pond Dam was working with the Old Mill Dam property owner. There was a public-private partnership being established to put a walking trail around the existing pond. But unfortunately, with the failure of that dam at the Old Mill, that basically wiped away those plans for that walkway. So it became important that if that walkway were to ever be successful and be realized here in the town, that the property owner would need to, restore the dam. He was able to, over the course of that same time frame, secure personal funding to begin the process of rebuilding the Old Mill Dam. Basically, we were given a brand new canvas. The walking trail was originally designed or thought to be up in the woods area and closer to the residential properties that are around there. We were able to get the walkway itself down near water's edge simply because of economics. It was much cheaper to then build right along an empty pond, and we were able to, frankly, make something that turned out to be better than what we had originally anticipated with the original project.
10 years after, literally, almost to the day, 10 years after the flood from Hurricane Joaquin, we are in a much better position than we would have ever thought we could have been. I really strongly believe we wouldn't have anticipated that this could have been rebuilt and that the pond would turn out as nice as it is. All 1.15 miles of sidewalk that dogs and kids and people walk every day, including in the rain today. I would have never anticipated it. But that comes back to, it's not just us being resilient and having the hope to get through it, but everybody doing it. The watershed below us, freeway music across the street from us. We all endured it, and we all kept thinking that we could get through this, and we did. And they were allies, and we're back.